Hello and welcome everybody, this is Roland from graphicinmotion.com and it is tutorial time again. In this tutorial I will show you how to create an organic floral grow animation in After Effects. I use this technique a lot in my Floral Watercolor design pack, as you can see here. And today I will show you how you can create one of these elements. So let's get started with the tutorial. I will basically focus on this floral element here and the growing effect of these elements. I will definitely not cover all of them step by step because this is just too much for one tutorial, but I will show you the basic techniques and then you can apply it to your artwork. If you want to follow along the tutorial, you can download some assets on my website. You will find the link in the video description. So let's take a look what we are going to create in this tutorial. So first of all, we are going to focus on this composition and especially on this element right here. So this is the first thing that we are going to create. This grow effect of this illustration. And as you can see, it's very subtle, but it has some special tricks how to get a really organic movement. We will also use some very cool expressions. And yeah, this is our first part. But before we do that, let's take a look how I prepare these files in Photoshop to import them to After Effects and to animate them. So in Photoshop, you see it looks like this. And I really painted these on paper with watercolors. And as you can see here, I'm not a really good watercolor painter, but I thought, well, I give it a try. And actually I enjoyed the process quite a bit to change the medium, to get away from the computer and to really get my hands on some paper and some watercolors. And of course you see it's blotchy and it's not really beautiful, but it was a little bit on purpose because I thought, well, this has this handcrafted look to it. And if you put everything together, it has a very nice style. So I didn't want to correct too much of my mistakes that I made in the watercolors. I could, of course, correct more in Photoshop later on, but I didn't care about it too much. But there are some things that you have to correct. And if we take a look here at this image, it's already separated from the paper background, of course. So I just removed that in Photoshop and I did a little bit of cleanup of the edges. And then I separated all the leaves to separate layers. So this is important if you want to animate this. These leaves have to be on separate layers. And then there is another thing. If you have overlapping elements, as I have here, for example, these two leaves, of course, on paper, this leaf here was incomplete because this part here was missing. So I had to create this later on in Photoshop. So this overlapping part here, I just added in Photoshop. And the same applies for the stem. The stem, of course, was not a continuous stem because I had this leaf in there that was actually cutting it apart. But just in Photoshop, then I added this piece in here. And if you zoom in, you definitely recognize it. But in the animation in After Effects, in your composition, you won't recognize it. It's no problem. So this is how I set up these illustrations. And as I said, you can download this file on my website if you want to follow along the tutorial. But I would definitely recommend that you grab some paper and some watercolors or whatever you want to use and draw some things yourself, or maybe you want to draw it digitally in a drawing app. So let's go to After Effects and let's get started with this animation. So when I import this Photoshop file, I want to make sure that I import it as a composition with retained layer sizes. And okay. Now open up the composition and now we get the files. Let me move this here. Maybe I just move it up a little bit like so. Okay. So first of all, I want to animate the growing of the stem. So I turn off all my leaves for a moment. And now I can think about how I want this to animate. So actually I want to animate the stem. Then I want to grow this big leaf here. Then I want it to grow on, and then this leaf should start growing, and then all the others will just pop up. And it makes sense if you have different floral elements that you create different variations how these grow. So this is what I did for my pack. I really tried to create a few variations because then if you put them together in the composition, it will look more natural, of course. So to create this growing effect, I first of all need a mat. And to create a mat, I will use a new layer. So let's create a new layer and call it mat. And now I will add a stroke effect to that and change it to untransparent. Now we have to draw our masks. Therefore, I use the pen tool and I start drawing on my matte layer. And first of all, I just trace this stem here. More or less accurate. Don't have to be too accurate. You can come in here and correct it later on. Just try to get the basic shape in here for now. Okay. And now let's take a look what we are going to do. The next part that I want to grow is actually, this part here. So I will zoom in a little bit. So to create a new mask, I quickly click away from the layer and now I can create a new one. Like that. Now again, another new mask for this little thing here. And now we'll just speed up this part that you don't have to watch me here tracing all of these twigs here. Okay, so now this part is done. You see that I created a mask for each of these little twigs. And I also created these masks in the direction that I want them to grow and also in the order that I want them to grow. And you will see this now if we actually turn on all masks in our stroke effect and increase the size here a little bit. I will change the color for now just to make this more obvious to a red color, and I will turn off my masks for a moment. Now you see what we got here. And I want to make sure that this is more or less covering all of my stem and of my parts, something like that. And then I will just turn on an alpha matte on my stem layer. And now we can animate this mask here. So we just have to animate this end value and you see what we have here now. If I create an animation here from, oops, this was the wrong one, from 0 to 100, then this will grow as we expect. So let's do that. Let's create this animation. And I want this animation to be approximately, let's say 1.5 seconds long, maybe. So let's create a keyframe here, 100%. I can change this later on. Let's see whether this looks fine. Maybe we just create an easy ease keyframe by pressing Shift F9. So let's take a look. And yeah, actually, I like this. This looks pretty cool. Now it's time to create the animation for the leaves. So let's select the leaves and let's turn them on. And if I select the leaves and you take a look here, the anchor point is definitely on the wrong spot. So if I scale this now, of course it will scale in its center, and we don't want this. We want it to scale right from its connection point to this stem here. So we have to shift these anchor points, and therefore you use the anchor point tool. That's Y on your keyboard. And then you just start shifting these. And you already see that this is, a little bit of tedious and repetitive work, but there is really no other way to do it. So if you want to do these floral elements from illustrations, then this is the way you have to work. And maybe you can imagine that creating this pack was also quite a bit of work, because I actually really created a lot of elements and I had to go through these steps over and over again. So it was a little bit boring, but I think that the result was worth it. And if you don't want to do all of this, what you see here, you can just buy my pack. That way you save a lot of time and you help me out a little bit. So this would be very nice. Okay, so now I think I have all my leaves in place. Let's take a look. Let's just scale them. Yep, that looks good. And now we will create a simple scale and rotation animation. So let's start with the scale. And I want this to scale within 1 second. So I will move my cursor to 1 second, and then I will set a keyframe on 100% scale. And now I set keyframe 0% scale in the beginning of our animation. And you see now they are growing all at the same time. Of course, we have to offset them. But before I do that, I want to animate their rotation a little bit. And to animate the rotation, let's see, I want to vary this a little bit. So I do not want them to rotate all in the same manner, because this would be pretty uniform and not really organic. But I will start out with a simple rotation animation, and then we can change the values a little bit. So let's go to the rotation values here and set a keyframe of 0 degrees at 1 second. And then we move backwards, and let's say I just put in a value of -40 for now, just that I have something in here and that I have a value on all of my leaves. Okay, now you see, let me play a quick preview what we have now. So you see that for a few of these leaves here on the left side, especially for this one here, I want the rotation actually to go the other way around. So I will just change their rotation. So let's go in here and let's select these leaves here. I want this one, and that one. And I will just take a look. So for the first one, I will set it to 40 degrees. And now I changed all three of them. That's not a big deal. I can just come in here and change this now a little bit. Maybe this one gets a little bit more, 45, and this one gets a little bit less, like 32. And now we have a little bit of variation in here, as you can see. That looks quite nice. Okay, so let's create a bit more variation here. So this one I also want to rotate in the other direction. So instead of -40, I will put in here maybe 50. So let's give this a really stronger rotation, like so. Cool. And for this one, I will just change the value a little bit. So instead of -40, we'll go with -46. And then we have this one here. We will change this as well. So instead of -40, I will change it to -34. So now we have just a little bit of variation in here. And that's actually pretty good. So now let's line them up that the timing is right. So I will just make a little bit more room here that I can see what I'm doing. Now, the first leaf that I want to grow is this one here. So let's select it. And let's take a look at what point in time I want it to grow. I will zoom in here a little bit. So we'll just shift it right here. Then let's move on with our animation and until we reach the top leaf. That's exactly here. So I will select this leaf and shift this over here. And now we will just grow them here. So the next one is this one. Shift this over here. And again, you see, it's, yeah, a bit of a repetitive, tedious task. But this is how this works. Okay, so now the next one, like so. And the next one. This one here. Now this one. And you see, this is a plant that has not that many leaves. So I have some in my pack that have way more leaves. And then this gets really, really boring. But okay, we already finished. So now let's take a look how this looks like. Let's zoom out a little bit. Like so. So let's create a quick run preview. And actually I like the growing effect. Looks not too bad. But of course we have to add way more elements so that this looks natural. Now it looks very, very rigid, very static. There is no movement here and nothing. So we have to keep working on this. So the next thing that I want to add is a little bit of a scaling effect. And to do that, we can actually create an adjustment layer. So let's create a new adjustment layer and put it on top of everything here. And let's rename this that we know what this is. This is the scale. And we will also put in here a bend. So let's say scale bend. Now, to animate the scale, we will create a transform effect. All right. And the transform effect With the transform effect, you can shift everything based on an adjustment layer. That's quite nice. So let's do that. But we have the same problem. If I scale this now, you see it's scaling from the center point, and I don't want this. So to shift the anchor point here, we just select the anchor point and then we put it down here where we want it to be, like so. And now you see that everything jumped up, and this is because now I have to change the position actually and bring it back down. So let's change this position here, and now this should work. So we can actually also just copy these values, I think. So let's copy this value, and this should do the same. Yeah, that does the trick. And now if I scale it, you see it scales from the right spot, from the bottom of the plant. Now let's create this scale animation. So I want it to be not at 0. Actually, I want it to be at 50 in the beginning. So let's just create a keyframe here. And then we will scale it until all of these leaves are more or less finished. So something like maybe around 2 seconds. Let's take a look here and set it to 100. Now let's also ease into this keyframe here. Let's take a look. And this doesn't look too bad. We could actually maybe even turn this down to 35 here. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, now I want to add some bending so that this leaf or this plant also bends a little bit while growing, and therefore we will use an effect that's called CC Bendit. So let's add this here. And we have to set this up also. So you see you have this bottom point here, and the bottom point should be at the bottom of your plant. But if you take a close look, it creates some kind of artifacts here, as you see here. So make sure that it is, a little bit below it, because then the artifacts will not be that obvious, like so. And then we take the top point and we shift this above our plant. And you have to take a look at the sides here, because it will cut it off at some point. All right, make sure that it is above your plant, that everything is visible. And now we can create this kind of a bend effect. And that's pretty cool for this kind of an animation. So this way you could also create some wind effects or something like that with a wiggle or whatever. But for now, we just want to have this slight growing effect. And let me take a look how I want this to bend. I think I want it to bend from this side while growing. So yeah, that's pretty good. So let's set a keyframe in the beginning here. Let's see, maybe 40. And then until the end here, until everything is grown around here. So 2.5 seconds. And I will set it to 0 here. So let's take a look how this looks. Actually, I think I didn't set a keyframe. Yeah, I didn't set a keyframe. Sorry, this was a mistake. So 40 and 0. Okay. Now let's take a look how this looks like. Grows nicely. Is it the right direction? I'm not sure. It's not too bad, but maybe I try -40 here for a moment, just to try out both directions. No, it's definitely the other side, but I think that the value is actually a little bit too much, so we set it to 30. Yeah, this looks quite nice. And I also want to ease into this animation here, so Shift F9. Let's take a quick look again. Yeah. So you see now it's already a little bit more organic. So there's one more thing that I want to add here, and this is a quite nice trick. I want to add some expressions that we have some wiggle, and I want the wiggle to be on the scale and on these rotations and also on the bending. So let's take a look. I will go to my composition that's here, because here is my expression and I don't have this in my head, so I have to take a look here. So let me copy this expression for a moment, copy. And now we go to our composition and we will go to the scaling here first of all, and I alt click the stopwatch to add the expression. And now let's take a look at this expression. So I actually did not write this myself because I definitely cannot do this, but I modified it a bit. So what I did here is, this is an expression to add some overshoot to keyframe animations. And you can get this expression from Dan Abbott's on his very, very cool site, motionscripts.com. I will also pull a link to this into the video description. Motion Scripts is great. So if you don't know this website, please check it out. There you can find really the best collection of After Effects expressions. I modified it a bit. So I added these random values here. And if you're not into expressions, I don't want to go to too much detail, but the idea behind it was that I didn't want to come into each of these expressions and change the keyframe or the values to get some variation in it, because I had so many elements that I wanted to manipulate with these expressions that I had to find a way to somehow, randomize this. And that's why I used these small random values here and the frequency and the decay, and I experimented which values work. And that's what I came up with. And now I added it to the scale. So if we take a look now at this animation, you will see, in this case, not that much. Okay, so let's copy it to the scale of the leaves. So let's select the leaf, let's go scale. And now I go copy expression only. Now I select all of my values here, all of the scale values, and paste it in. And let's see, now we should see something here. Oh yeah. Now, if you really take a close look, it's very subtle, but this is what makes the difference. Now they wiggle a little bit. You see, they overshoot a tiny bit, and then they come back to their resting position. And I want to do the same now for the rotation. And I have to go back to my composition and see whether I actually used the same expression for the rotation. I'm not sure, but I think, it's the same. Okay, so I can just copy this one here again. So let's go to copy expression only. Now let's select all of our leaves and let's go to the rotation values. Again, select all the rotation values and copy this. Paste it in. And of course I will. And of course I will copy this expression also to the video description, so you do not have to write it from the screen here, So you can just copy paste it into your project then. Okay, so let's take a look. What am I doing here? I added it to the rotation. So let's take a look what this does now. Now you see that also the rotation is slightly overshooting, and we get a little bit more of an organic feel. And now I want to do the same for this bending effect. So let's go to the bending effect and let's paste the, oops, this was the wrong thing to do. So I can just do copy expression only and then paste it here. This should work. Yeah, this works. Now we have the same with this bending. You see a very slight overshoot here, but I think that this really makes a difference. So let's take a look. And we have some artifacts here, as you can see. I don't know what this is, but I guess it is the bending and maybe it is the expression. So let's do, it is the expression. Okay. So I really don't understand why this is happening. I had this happening a few times. What I did then is that I just cut off this animation before this happened. So I just made the endpoint like before these artifacts appear, and you can extend it later on with the time remap effect or in a editing program, so it's no problem. But I really don't know why this happens. It has something to do with this bandit effect. It's a little bit, it's a little bit dangerous to use sometimes, as you can see here with these really, really, really strange artifacts. Okay, but the result, the growing effect, is really cool. So if you take a look at this now, growing out really beautiful. Good. So this is part 1 of this tutorial. And now let's take a look at the other elements in our scene here. So let's go to the composition and let's take a look at this gold herb here. So this one here. So what did I do with this? Actually, it's more or less the same. I also used an adjustment layer and I scaled it. As you can see, I also used this bending effect. So if you take a look here at the scale and the bend, you see I have this transform and I have the bend. It's exactly the same as in the other example. And there's also this expression here, as you can see here. And I actually changed this a little bit. Okay, interesting. So maybe I should copy this expression. Let's try this out and copy it to our bending here. Maybe this is working better. Let's take a look here. Oh, it doesn't make a lot of difference here. So let's just undo this. The only difference between these is how I created the reveal matte. And in this case, let's take a look at this reveal matte. I used a paint effect. So if we go to E, you see I have the paint effect here. And if you're not familiar with the paint effect in After Effects, it's actually really pretty cool. So what I wanted to achieve by using this technique is I wanted to create the effect, the illusion that someone is really painting it while it is growing, because you see that these elements have this very rough painted, and this is also watercolor, by the way, a gold watercolor with glitter in it. So I wanted it to really roughly paint on, and it's a little bit difficult to create this effect with masks. So what I did is I used the paint tools in After Effects, and I will show you this right in this composition. So let's just turn off these scale and bend effects, and I will just create another reveal matte to show you how this works. So therefore I have to pause quickly because I have to switch to my tablet, because I cannot do this with the mouse. So I will just switch to my tablet and then we'll be right back. Okay, so now I switched to my graphic tablet and now I can paint with my stylus here. And this way it's way easier. You can do it with the mouse, but I really can't do it. So what we are going to do now, we are going to select our layer directly. So not the reveal matte layer, but just this layer directly. And then you can either double click or you can just go to layer. And now we want to select the brush tool. And in the brush tool settings, you see that we have this duration here, and we have this constant duration, or we have this right on here. And change it to right on, because then you can do something pretty cool. And by default, you see that this is set to red, but I want it to be white actually. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. We can paint with red because it's a little bit more visible. We can also change the brush size here, so make it maybe a little bit bigger. So let's make it 100. Then it's a little bit better. Okay, and now what you can do is you can draw, and After Effects will exactly record your drawing movement. And this is pretty cool. So let me show you this in a moment. Let's make sure that our time indicator is at frame 0. And then I will just try to trace this first leaf here. So I will just really quickly draw this here, and I'm a bit messy, you know, like someone draws it very fast. And now you see what we have. We have this animation here that is actually covering this leaf. And of course now I have this paint effect here, if you take a look here. So let's do another one just to show you how this works. So I go back to my time indicator, and now I will just trace the second leaf here. So let's make it like this. Zoop, zoop, zoop. And so, okay. Now you see I have two parts here. And now I can use this to create a reveal matte. So let's do this. Just as an example, I will create a new layer and just put this right on top of my Photoshop layer here. Now let's select the paint effect and let's copy it to my layer. And now let's just delete it from here because I don't need this anymore. Let's go to the composition now again. And let's see. Now the paint effect should be on transparent. And now you see it is here. And what we can do now is first of all, we can retime it. So we press U on our keyboard to reveal the keyframes. Let me take a quick look here. So we have our first stroke. That's this one, I think. Let's take a quick look. Not sure now which one is which one. So let's take a quick look. Yeah, that's the first stroke here, and that's the second one. So I want this first one to be quite fast, maybe something like this. So I just changed these keyframes here. Oh no, this is actually the second one. So let's start with this one here. Let's bring this in here, quite fast, and then we want the second one to start. So something like that. And now you can take a look how this works. So this is the way how I created all of these reveal masks. And then again, you just select an alpha matte, and then you have this effect, this right on effect, as you can see here. And you can always retime this by just changing these keyframes, and that's really pretty cool. So this is how I created this gold herb. So let's delete this. And you see now how this works. Let's again activate our scale and bend. And you see what we have here now. What's happening here? Oh, I think I have to set this to Luma matte. Is this right? Yeah. So you see, this is how I created these growing and painting effects. Okay, so now we got two of these elements. And yeah, I will show you this other element here quickly. And it's exactly the same, basically. You know, you can just, let's open this up. So you see, same idea behind here. It's just all these parts animated, slight rotation, slight scaling, slight bending. So yeah, exactly the same as the other parts. And then I just put these together. Then I have these small gold splatters in here. And if we take a look at these gold splatters, that's also very simple. I really made these gold splatters also with watercolor, you know, just put it on the brush and then just splatter it on your paper and scan it in. The reveals here are a little bit different, and I just created very simple reveal masks, 3 of them actually. This is the first one, first pass, then the second one, and the third one. I offsetted these a little bit, and I created this reveal, which makes it a little bit organic. If you want to learn how to create these reveal masks, I would recommend to watch another of my tutorials, and it's a watercolor slideshow tutorial where I show how to create really organic watercolor kind of reveals, and I will also put a link in this description, and I will also put it now in an info card right here. So there you can learn how to do this. And yeah, that's how I reveal all my background elements. So if we take a look at this scene that I created here, you see we have these watercolor elements here, and they also reveal in exactly the same way. So if we take a look at these here, these I didn't paint with watercolors actually. I painted these digitally, you know. So, and yeah, exactly the same reveal mattes here. You see, very similar to the ones of the splatters, just to create a little bit of an organic reveal. It's not that detailed. It's not necessary to be that detailed because these are really just background elements that are very subtle if you take a look here at this animation. Okay, so now let me just show you quickly how I set up this scene. Therefore, I will switch to 2 views here. And you see this is the top view, so it's very, very simple. I just added a camera with a slight animation, as you can see here. And I just put in these layers and 3D space to have a little bit of parallax going on. And then I animated this text here with very, very simple text animation effects. If you're interested in these text animation effects, then tell me in the comments. Maybe I will make an extra tutorial about these things. Okay guys, so this is it for today's tutorial. If you have any questions or ideas, then please write them directly in the comments. And I want to invite you to subscribe to my channel for more After Effects and motion design related tutorials and content. So thank you very much for watching, and I really hope to see you soon. Goodbye.